All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and apparently Enzo Maresca's. We are back here for another edition of London is Blue Live at Classic Football Shirts in London. A very good friend of ours hosting us during this festive season as we get a chance to enjoy a little bit of conversation about Chelsea Football Club. Nick, we've got a really wonderful program for the listeners and viewers today because we've got a split session. We've got our first former Chelsea player joining us live, and we're going to be doing a little bit of conversation after the fact about just a little bit of a fan and journalist perspective about what's going on in the state of Chelsea. So do you want to walk us through the lineup we have for this special festive episode live in person at Classic Football Shirts?
Yes, I would, and I think just a round of applause for Paul Canoville being here this evening. So. Obviously, I think many of you know Paul's story. We don't need to rehash it from end to end here, but Chelsea's first black player, played for Chelsea from 81 to 86. Tons of great memories, but Paul, because we're in this palace of shirts here, can you just give us your favorite Chelsea shirt that you either played in or that you just loved post-career?
I had to be remembered, and it's always going to be the Lecoq 84.
Stripes. Beautiful.
Red and split, white and blue and red. And you know what? Because I remember we had our first sponsor from Air Golf, I think.
Yeah, Golf Air, yeah.
Isn't it? So remembering that shirt, oh man, it's good to put on, don't get me wrong. There was other shirts, there was the red one, there was the white one. I think, unfortunately, the red one was bad luck. Yeah, it was bad luck. I mean, we got beaten from QPR with that shirt, and it was didn't want to wear that. But I loved the blue one. It was ideal. Then the yellow one even came in. Don't get me wrong. The yellow one for me was obviously, if everybody knows, when I played against Sheffield Wednesday, playing in that. It was so funny because we weren't allowed to give the shirt away. We weren't allowed to take it off and throw it to the crowd as you see them now. And every time that shirt was washed, it shrank. You know when you were just stretching the arm just to make sure it just shrunk every time when that wash lady, she washed it every time. Don't get me wrong, bless her soul, but it just shrank every time. But yeah, we weren't allowed to give it away. We were told if we gave it away, we'd be fined, Mr. Bates. Yeah, that was the best shirt for me. I've always remembered Lecoq. I love it. It's funny that they've gone out of business, haven't they? I believe Lecoq now. Would anybody know that? Yeah. Because the day's fashion with shirts these days, there's no kind of nothing about them.
You mentioned this idea of shirts that are bad luck. Do you as a player, how much do you put into stock of like bad luck for things or shirts or things of that nature?
For me, I had a lucky, I say my ring. It was a little diamond ring that I had on. I wouldn't take it off. I rubbed it 3 times, and you had to tape anything gold and anything like earrings. You taped it, and I taped that. And it was rubbed. I had to make sure I rubbed that before the game starts and whatever. For me, obviously, the number was number 11 shirt or the number 12. It's after that, them 2 shirts. With number 11, I know I'm playing. With number 12, I'm a sub. So cool. So, you know what I mean? I love playing it on. Love putting the shirt on. Recognising it. I can remember cold weathers like this, we had that thermal thick. Bloody hell, it was that thick. It kept me warm in the dugout and so forth, but I could see how it's changed now, definitely.
So, I mean, we're in the festive fixture period now, right? I mean, this is kind of the time of year where things really heat up in terms of where the results go and the table shakes out. Do you have any fond or not so fond memories of playing during this period?
You know what, it's funny because Saturday I was there at the game at Aston Villa and I was doing the tour visit. And they come at the side there and just talking to a kid. Look, I used to run down this left wing often enough. And I remember when it was totally cold, how we used to rub our legs with deep heat. But made sure we didn't go too far up. You know what I'm saying? Them deep heat back in the day. So, but you soon warmed up, don't get me wrong. But I remember that it weren't the best of pitches when we played that. Don't get me start the season because it was always, after 4 or 5 games, the sand came out, covered, dip chips and everything. But looking at the pitch now, it looks unbelievable. I love to be playing on that. It's flat, it's greased, it's just right for any kind of little small stud and large studs, yeah. So, but again, yeah, playing at home was always, I think, I looked at brochure today, and the game was when we played against Swansea. No word of a lie. And I didn't realise I scored a hat-trick that day. And 2 former Chelsea players, Gary Stanley, if anybody remembers Gary Stanley, and Gary Chivers.
Oh,
yeah, it was in there. And I didn't realise Gary. I remember Gary Stanley was in it, but I didn't remember Gary Chivers playing. So I've got to ask him when I see him on tomorrow if he wasn't, the 12 or not, or he was a sub. But yeah, that was the game itself under the floodlights. But got a hat-trick, given the ball. I didn't know why I was given the ball at the time by the referee. I didn't know what to do with it, but the lads told me, "Come on, Canners, go next door and let the Swansea players sign it." And then they signed it for me, and I took it straight home to my mummy, should I say, and she put it in the cabinet, and that's where it stays now. So, yeah, that's my memory of good memories. Don't get me wrong, there was quite a few, but that was a memory of at home at the bridge.
When you think about this period of holiday fixtures, I mean, it's essentially represents like the halfway point in a Premier League season. How often did you know like where the season was trending, and how much did you feel like you had a chance, or the players had a chance to change like the momentum of a season at this point?
It really depended how we started for that season, and you're right, because August started the season. Now we're in November, December, and it really, because at that time you've got to remember it was just Football League.
Yeah.
Division 2 or Division 1, that was it. We didn't have no European game, no Championship, or the Cup games and so forth. So it was about, when that season, when I started, it was a battle. It was about to stay in the 2nd division and not drop. The following season, it was tremendous right away with the new players, gelled right away. Pat, Kerry, Dave, all of them gelled right away, and we was off the tracks. You know what I mean? So once you saw us like the home games winning, and as well as the away games, oh man, you knew where we was. The confidence was high with everybody, even enjoying training. You know what I mean? When you're enjoying training, that's even better. Because like when you're losing, boy, tackles are going wildfire. But everybody's settled, looking after each other. That's how you know you've got a settled side. I can imagine how today we're watching our team, and it's hard, it's really, for me, it's difficult to accept how we're up and down. Teams that we're beating that are good teams, and you're thinking, well, next week we should get a result from this lower team, and we're not getting the results. Why is that? It's a question, I don't even want to go and question that. I don't want to put some ears are right here, I don't want to, you know what I mean? I got to question it. I would be questioning the manager and asking what's the situation. But that's what we're seeing now, and it is upsetting, because the team where we think we're supposed to gain those points to help us, you know what I mean, climb up that, we're not doing it.
What does the dialogue look like between players and a manager when results aren't necessarily going the way that you would hope they would?
You know what, that's a question that you can never quite tell, because are they happy? Does somebody want to say something? Are they unhappy with the manager? Are they unhappy with the system? That's something that you can only discuss between them. And somebody has to take that role as a leader to come and say, manager, look, the players are not happy. You know what I mean? I don't know who that person would be. Whether you say the captain, that would be Reece, but somebody individual has got to come in there and say, look, man, we're not happy, because this situation now, we're up and down. The change of players as well every week out, and I know you're trying to keep players happy, but how I see it, football is like, if you go with a winning side, you stay with a winning side. It's simply you stay with it, unless that poor performance, then you change it, but I don't know. I'm just seeing this different change, and I'm thinking, what's the situation here? When we should be at teams going at them, why are we standing back? Why are we sitting back? Let's take it to them, especially at home. So, yeah, it's a bit upsetting for me as a fan. I don't know how it is for you, look.
There's a lot of head shaking and agreeing in the audience.
Really, don't get me wrong, I watched the game and I said, yeah, come on, man. And like, we don't, you see when we come out of the tracks, we start, you can see the difference when we're up for it. We can see, go, we're in these 20 minutes, we're looking great. And then after that, we get a goal. And now I want you to still go at them again, look for that next goal. We kind of back up, or we stop and we slow down. And I'm thinking it gives them, the other team now, the input, and they get stronger. And then we're on the back foot. And I'm thinking, why do we do that? And we've done it often. I'm telling you, we've done it often. And that's where we've been losing those points, and unnecessary. Yeah, that's probably got to be a discussion, most definitely, if anything, with them players. We can look at it and say that we're lacking some experience. Some of them don't agree with the back four and so forth, but hey, what? That's the manager. And by the time, if there's something that needs to be strengthened, then they need to sort that out sooner, not too later, because then we're going to lose ground. You know what I mean? We're Champions League, fair enough. We're in a FA Cup, fair enough. All these cup games, it's a lot of games. It really is a lot of games. But the way we're playing, we're not going to go any further. And that's really upsetting for me to see that, because you could see that before we played. Don't get me wrong, you've got a result down Newcastle, here we go. Bam, what happened? Aston Villa, great side. They are a great side, but we showed them first half how we could play. But we couldn't get that input, and we lost. And it was upsetting to see that result, really was. I think it would have lifted us up further. Tomorrow, Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth started off very well in the season. They've lost a little games, and I'm sorry. I'd hate to see how Bournemouth perform tomorrow. If they play it better than, boy, I think something's going to happen. Most definitely, something's got to happen. So, yeah. Probably overdone it there, didn't I? But anyway, let's go.
Something to get off your chest a little bit there.
Yeah, trust me, you don't know how much as the next player watching our team like that, and I know that we can, if we showed it, that we can do it, we can play that better, and we can do it, then why don't you continue doing that? Why am I seeing a change of play? And I don't understand that. And against teams that, no disrespect to teams that are weaker than us. And I don't understand. And I think when we was playing back in the day, oh man, it wasn't just the manager had to say anything. Us individual players, what are we doing? We're pointing. We're picking on people, you know what I mean? We're not picking, but supporting. Come on, boy, you can do better. I know you can. And it's lifting up. So I don't know if that's happening at all. Nobody's lifting up his teammate and said, look, man, we shouldn't be in this position.
Have you seen that evolution in Reece James as a captain, to like from where maybe he started to where he's kind of evolved?
I've seen Reece change since he's come back, being more mature, stronger. The individuals are powerful. I mean, when you see a player, and I showed it against Newcastle, showed it again, when he loses the ball, he doesn't give in. He's staggering out and he gets back and he wins that ball again. Here we start. I know that shows a different change of what we saw of Reece back in the season with his injury. This is a player that if we had all those players around him playing the same way, I can't say nothing. I wouldn't be saying anything right now, because every one of them would be battling. Everyone would be winning. That's me. That means it well. That's for me, it's what's needed, quite honestly, yeah. Quite now.
So we're obviously visiting from the US to the UK. We know that in a couple months' time, you'll actually be visiting from the UK to the US to go take a part in Blues Day, the Carefree Louisiana kind of special event that takes place over or near the Mardi Gras season. Are you looking forward?
You excited
to
for Mardi Gras?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
because now you said that, yeah? Let me take a sip of this Coca-Cola. Here. My sister mentioned Mardi Gras, and it's obviously that we see it on telly now. We say, oh my God, I'd like to be there shaking my head. And to be invited, don't get me wrong, and it is going to be a hospitality, because in amongst Chelsea fans that's celebrating this, and obviously two of us coming down there from outside of London and going to take in this experience. Trust me, I can't wait. I've already got my beads, I've got my hands. I'm not lying to you. I went Amazon here, ordered that jam. You know what I mean? And I'm ready. But I love my music, so that music's gonna hit me. So I'm gonna. But as well as you've let me know that the food is on point. Oh, Bad man. So I know he'd be putting on some weight.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yet another podcast.
Sorry, having a go, but I know I'll put on weight. But yeah, I'm really looking forward.
Third podcast.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, and Kailash also is the chief kind of commercial officer for the Paul Canoville Foundation. I mean, just in terms of being able to kind of expand that message, into the U.S. and kind of what, Paul kind of post-playing career and what the foundation is doing. How do you feel about kind of the evolution of like how you're being able to get international
it's amazing.
now?
I think it's also the fact that not just, we help a lot of people here in the UK, but the fact now that we can go out to Louisiana, we're going to go to a school while we're out there, we're going to do some work with a local charity while we're out there as well. And I think it's just being able to expand that message of that empowerment of some of the students that we're going to help out there. I think it's going to be such a cool thing to do. We're going to have, I'm sure, a lot different questions from the Q&A side of it with some of the students out there that we have here. But look, I honestly can't wait. And more importantly, I can't wait to spend it with all the fans. It's a shame we can't take everyone in the UK with us, really.
It is an experience, don't get me wrong. I've been in America and gone in schools as well. And it's like when you nurture them, when you've talked to them and relate with my background and where I've come from and where I was the first player, they're sewing what? And what you took and received. I'm looking forward. I really am. I'm looking forward to sharing with these kids as well. So I think that's a big factor for us that, as you said, where the foundation has gone, it really has picked up so well that being invited across, the border, I'm just thrilled how it's come about.
It's honestly a fantastic time. If you're in the U.S. and get a chance to go to Blues Day, they take care of you in an incredible way. The food is incredible. The music's incredible. The parades are incredible. It's worth it. We did a whole video on our YouTube channel, so you can go check it out. Fantastic time. We had Dylan from the Carefree Louisiana group on a couple of weeks ago for our pod, and
Nice.
he's ready.
Fun.
He's ready to roll.
It's good, man.
So this is also the kind of, the end of a year heading into the next one, 25 into 26. Are there, things are kind of, not necessarily resolutions, because I think, the foundation has done so much great work, but, in terms of aspirations or goals kind of heading into 26 or things that you're looking for that, if we did this podcast, same time next year, that we'd be looking back on saying, wow, we can't believe that you guys accomplished this and this and this.
I think that's what we're looking at, really. Don't get me wrong, as you said, if you're chatting about next year, what we've accomplished. Right now, setting the trend is like, it's now just not in the UK, the foundation is being spoken about. It's now abroad. People are reaching us from abroad and they want us to come out. That, to me, and everybody keeps telling me, what's your legacy? That is my legacy right there, sharing, not just here in England, but I'm allowed to share abroad. And that the kids, and not just the kids are interested, the adults, elderly, interested in who we are, who I am, who the foundation is and what we do.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add to that is kind of, not just that, obviously look at the work that we do in schools and being able to expand that is obviously part of our goals this year, and to reach out to other parts of the world and internationally help is definitely something that we want to do. But I think if we look at the Chelsea community as well, I think we've had a lot of success kind of connecting the community a little bit as well, and we want to continue to do that in a World Cup year, hopefully we're all in Budapest celebrating as well, but it's looking a little way off now at the minute, but hotel's still booked, so I'm still going to keep it there. So
let's just celebrate a League Cup final first.
Maybe.
And then we'll get to
one at a
Budapest.
time.
Let's start with
One
that.
at a time. One at a
And
time.
I think that's something that we've kind of got the power, and he's got the power to do. Right, Canners is in quite a unique position where he has that ability to kind of connect the club a little bit when it is kind of fractious, and does feel like we're more of an entity at times opposed to actually being a valued member of the community. So that's we that's another thing that if we can look back at this time next year and can say that we've done that or played our part in it, that would be,
I think you just said
hugely
that
successful as well.
Being valuable for the community, and I think that's what it is right now at this moment. I mean, I started this in 2015. It was just me and a couple of guys, and I didn't have all this input. Trust me, it was so difficult. going into schools. I was just saying the other day, I had to write letters to every school and the individual teacher to know what I'm doing and what I'd like to, would you be interested? But now, having a team, and it's a great team like yourself, Raphael and Marcus and those who help us as well, it's now everybody's reaching us and they're contacting us, and this is great. It shows that we're doing something, and it's something that, a service that we're offering that they want. And that's what I like about the foundation, here in the foundation.
It's the thing, yeah.
It's
That's
brilliant.
the best thing.
It's been great.
Means people
Don't get me wrong,
want to be part
we're
of
not
it.
forgetting Chelsea Football Club, but right now, you know what I mean? It's the Canners Foundation.
Easy,
that's it.
Canners, easy.
But
But,
anyway,
but I think it's a great example of just how you took your time at Chelsea to now putting you in a position to be able to kind of give back to the community, leveraging your experience, your background, your moments, and kind of carrying that forward. I think the mention of legacy that you talked about, being able to kind of now implant that into kind of future generations and watch that kind of grow over the years, I think is really going to be a rewarding element to kind of the post-play career that you have right now.
oh, it got, hopefully just continues as such, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be.
And that's where, as years goes by, don't get me wrong, I think I got a couple, or maybe a few years still. I won't stop, you know what I mean? Something really's got to be bad to make me stop, but I enjoy it every time. Whatever stage I've got, where I need to travel to, I'm excited. You know what I mean? It's never enough right now, so yeah, make it continue.
I'll recommend Frenchman Street in New Orleans for you if you want.
Cool.
If you want the music, that's the
Is
word.
that all right?
Yeah.
Just tell me.
Well, we thank you
wait.
so much, Kalish and Paul, for coming in to talk to us tonight here live at Classic Football Shirts to get a little bit of conversation about the current affairs of Chelsea Football Club, about what's going on with the foundation, and we look forward to welcoming you to the U.S. in 26 for Blues Day, and maybe we'll see you down there.
Thank you for having us.
Sounds great. Thanks
Yes.
for having us.
All right, well, welcome back for the second part of this London is Blue podcast live episode at Classic Football Shirts. And we are now speaking to good friends of the podcast, one Ben Jacobs, one Louis
Friends, huh?
Beneventi, just having a wonderful conversation about the state of Chelsea at this given point in time, which certainly should be the most docile, calm, and just therapeutic
Reasonable.
conversation to ever take place, Louis.
Reasonable. I'll try my best. I'll behave. I'll be good. I promise. Nick's already given me the 2-1-2. I need to be a good boy. It's okay.
Well, I'm sure you will be. Ben, I mean, this, it sounded like your holiday, though, is a little bit nicer than Chelsea's at this point in time.
I don't know, I'm a Leicester fan. We've had just as bad a Christmas. Unfortunately, we've actually got a derby game against Derby County at the moment. So if you think it's bad for Chelsea, try being in the Championship.
Well, we all had a chance to witness Chelsea lose 2-1 at home to Aston Villa over the past couple of days. We're now heading into Chelsea's last game of the 2025 calendar year against Bournemouth. And, just maybe thinking about it, Ben, taking a look at Chelsea's year as a whole and within 2025, what's your thoughts on just how Chelsea are ending this year, pros and cons?
I'm getting a sort of strange sense of deja vu because the sort of festive period a year ago and now feels like it's taken a relatively similar trajectory. And obviously all the early optimism in the last campaign was undone to an extent by that very dicey festive and New Year period, kind of extending into mid-February, and then they obviously picked up and got Champions League football. But I think if they go on the same path again, the expectation from the fans at least will be a little bit more. So if you're thinking about a report card, it should have Champions League football, a deep run in the domestic cups. If they can naturally go all the way in the Champions League, then that in itself trumps everything else. But at the moment, I think it's the same old inconsistency. It's some question marks over, I think half the room would probably say project. The other half would say managerial selections and a lack of maturity, which means that some may think it can be fixed in the market, and others may feel that whatever they do in the market, it's still the project that needs to mature. And I think we've kind of got ourselves stuck in this almost Christmas loop of limbo, seeing false promise, then silverware, then a bit more promise, and then a little bit of a step back after that. And once again, I think we're back where we started a year ago, where what they do in this festive and early New Year period is again going to be season defining. And if they replicate what they did a year ago, then they're going to come out of it with people thinking there hasn't been progress. If they kick on this time over the festive period, then I think we'll start to see some proof in the project.
So let's just break it down. I mean, for you covered the team all across America during the Club World Cup, and you saw the kind of quick evolution of this group, and then it's kind of been shaky for the start of the year. There's been some incredible moments, incredible highs, and there's been some pretty down periods as well. I mean, I think, Saturday was one of those. Is it the project or is it solvable? Just give us your take on it.
Just before we do that, we've got a high to my right in this incredible festive jumper, and we've got a low to my left in all black.
Very momentous, rather.
And even though they're kid sizes, somebody's got to get you that. We've got to have like a group pool together to buy you that, so we can have two Chelsea Christmas jumpers on either side. But I mean, look, highs and lows, I think you have to give Enzo Maresca credit, because if you remove the P word project from it, he's delivered 2 bits of silverware in his first season, coming from my club, Leicester, by the way, and on top of that, qualified for Champions League. So whether or not fans liked the style or the recruitment as to how they got there, that is success for a first season for any manager, I think, even at a massive club like Chelsea. But success breeds more success when you're used to being serial winners at a club like Chelsea, which is why if you set the bar higher than expected in that first season, you've got to match it or surpass it. So then when we look at have they matched or surpassed some of the fine moments of celebration from last season, yes, when they beat Barcelona. So that's right up there, not just in terms of the result, but I think equally as devastating and dominant performance as against PSG. And even without the red cards, Barcelona, I think Chelsea were all over them, and they probably still would have won that game by 3-0. So that's definitely up there. And then the low for me, Louis may have other more specific thoughts, but mine's like a broader low, and that's just the amount of missed opportunities, the amount of points they've dropped from winning positions. To have 13 points basically in your left hand, because Chelsea teams, when they lead, are supposed to kick on and double that lead, or in a worst case scenario, draw games. So to have thrown points away, 13 from winning positions, that's not a quirk for me. It's not a one-off. It's a byproduct of the fact that, yes, this project has huge ambition, and we have to give that credit. And I still think the owners could have the last laugh. But in terms of the group, the lack of maturity equals collectively 11 players on a field that cannot, for whatever reason, go for the jugular and kill off games. And they've been punished for that time after time. And I think that number halfway through a season of 13 points from winning positions is probably collectively the biggest low of the season so far.
And Louis, just for those who were not here live, there was a lot of shaking of the head during Ben's final few sentences there.
Yeah.
Let's get your thought, more of a fan perspective, a Chelsea fan perspective, on just the situation.
If I may, just really quick, if you had closed out those 13 points, you'd be tied with Arsenal.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda, I think is the response to that.
Basically,
I think that the project doesn't work at all. It's going around in circles, and the owners will not have the last laugh, because history has proven that consistently, not just with Chelsea. I think the best example in recent years would be Arsene Wenger, young guns, Theo Walcott, Samir Nasri, Bakary Sagna, all these young players coming through, didn't win anything, culture completely shifted. Arsenal still reeling from that 20 years on. An outlay of over £1 billion. Chelsea should not be looking like they are. They've gone backwards in the last summer window. They spent nearly £300 million just to go backwards. And the points total says that as well. I think how everything's operating, it is just incompetence at this point, especially from the sporting directors, who just seem to be completely out of their depth whenever it comes to serious players, serious coaches, serious people. I think Antoine Semenyo is a great example recently of someone who says, well, there's potential when it comes to Chelsea, it's briefed, it's put out there, everyone gets really excited, and then within a matter of hours, they don't believe in the project. I use that quite loosely. Something doesn't fit, and it just seems to be a case when it comes to serious people, they don't want to get involved. And for me, that smells a mile away. Dozens of red flags, and we've all watched enough football in this room, I think, and we've all being around football long enough to know, and without making it sound too cliche, you don't win anything with kids. And Alan Hansen was right when he said that, because that Manchester United team didn't just have kids in it. It had people with seniority, with maturity, a vein of understanding what it means to get over the line. I mean, you know, Canners was here beforehand talking about everyone picking people up. It's a bunch of young lads, and, you know, it's not their fault. You know, they're thrown into it at this point. And I think, especially an outlay of £1 billion to end the Aston Villa game with Malo Gusto at left back, Reece James filling in as centre half, the quality at the top end of the pitch just severely lacking. Over £1 billion is spent, and we can talk about net spend and all that sort of stuff, but look, the outlay doesn't match the quality that we should be seeing right now.
Ben, I want to pick up on this actually, because I think this is a point that I think a lot of people are wondering about, which is the outlay of spend, the focus on potential, I think is a core tenet of this ownership group, right? They want to buy players below their potential and have them grow into what they can potentially be. Obviously, that leaves room for, errors along the way, right? Because, if you're not who you eventually become, then you're going to need time to get there. But you could also argue that they're not purchasing players in core positions that would matter in the current moment. So you look at the striker position as an example of this. Liam Delap is not a finished article. Joao Pedro, probably not a pure number 9. You loan out Nico Jackson to, Bayern Munich. What are your thoughts about their kind of purchasing patterns? Because I think Dan's going to get to a list here in a second of the hits and misses, but is there a gap in the way that they're thinking? Because there have been definitely some hits. Let's not lie about it. I mean, Cole Palmer is obviously the example, but what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think that the challenge in judging this Chelsea project is that if everybody isn't at their peak and full potential, because that, as Louis alluded to, is part of the model, you're buying a maturity and talent, and there's an element of the Red Bull and an element of the multi-club, and they sort of run in tandem because you're trying to find and unearth young talents. You're exposing them all to first team football, when most clubs would keep the vast majority at under 23 or under 21. They wear the Chelsea badge, they kiss the Chelsea badge, they go up in value. And I think it is smart in some ways if you think that every academy, every group of players under 23 or under 21, the vast majority fail, every single club. So if you're just going to go, let's protect them, let's not expose them, and then let's release the vast majority, then you are missing an opportunity to raise the value and sell it and reinvest it in the club. But there's a line, because you don't want these players just to be all assets collected in such a high volume that you're chucking them all against the wall and hoping enough stick. And if Chelsea's model works, then the thing people don't speak about is the average age is supposed to go up now, not down. So we focused on youth because that's phase 1. But if 6 or 7 of these core first teamers remain, you would expect them to get another 3 to 5 years, and the average age will no longer be the youngest Premier League squad currently in terms of its starting 11. But that requires patience. It's contingent on the fact that star players don't get frustrated, because what if an individual moves faster than the project? Do they then turn around and say, I don't want to be at Chelsea anymore because I've got another opportunity at a club that's already winning all of the elite silverware? And I think these are the teething problems. But your question's hard to answer, because if we start with that premise that everyone that's joining Chelsea, your Estevals, your Enzo Fernandezes, your Moises Caicedos, your Marc Cucureas, they all basically need a season, if not potentially up to 3 years, before we can fully judge them. So if we were having this conversation now, we'd be slagging off Cucurella if he'd just joined, but you wait 18 months and he's excellent and he's a fan favourite. If we were having this conversation last Christmas, we'd all be saying new goalkeepers needed. Now it's maybe more 50-50, because Robert Sanchez, since the Club World Cup, in my opinion anyway, has been excellent. You've got Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Esteval Willian. So then if, to your point, you don't want to accept Liam Delap or Joao Pedro as a finished number 9, do we not have to at least give him the same period as Cucurella had? And that maybe means judging him next Christmas. And a lot of people might be eating humble pie. But there will be ones that just don't work.
Ben,
and
we're
that's
historically patient. We are the most patient fan base that's ever existed.
You though?
We love
You can't
patience.
spend this much money and keep asking for patience, and the goalposts continue to move.
Yeah, but I think you're looking at a collective number when, like, Mark Hughes, 5 million. So granted, yes, you could definitely say if they've spent $1 billion and they haven't found themselves an elite 9 or an elite goalkeeper, then over a series of windows, absolutely, if you're a fan, you're going to be turning around and basically pulling your hair. It's why most of the people in the crowd are bald, because they had hair when this Chelsea project first started.
Shots across the bow to Andrew
they're
McDougall.
thinking,
That's
wow.
tough.
Well, but then
Anthony Taylor was in attendance tonight, so very cool
1,
moment for us.
2, 3, all look good,
just
by the
point
way.
out all the lads you're saying should go to Turkey. Just say it, right?
No, they
There's
all
no
look great.
sponsorship here yet. I get what you're saying, but it's the consistent shifting of the goalpost which I think is driving people insane. They said they want to be judged after a certain amount of windows. Those windows have been and gone. They can then shift it to say someone else, to do something different. If you spend this much money, I get what you're saying, where it's a case of, there's loads of different players, but at this point it is throwing it at a wall and seeing what sticks. That's how it comes across. And if I'm being very, very, very honest, it's not good enough when they say they want to be an elite club. They want to be an elite club. Also comparing ourselves to the Red Bull Network. All due respect, Red Bull Network hasn't won anything of serious merit at any point. So I appreciate that they're trying to find a way to balance the costs and do certain things. Chelsea obviously aren't what they were under Roman Abramovich. I completely understand that. But this entire model is not working. It is completely redundant. And it's been proven because they continue to change goalposts. And when things go wrong, they're putting somebody else in charge or blaming somebody else. When things are going well, they're taking all the credit for it. It can't be half of this and half of that. If they put their hand up now and say, look, we appreciate things aren't great, things should be adapted, we should look at different things, I think a lot of people in this room and a lot of people would give them credit. But the fact is they have ridiculously thin skin, and when it comes to taking credit for things, they're there. When things go wrong, they're putting it on somebody else and saying different things, or signing a 15-year-old and saying, look, we've got this 12-year-old over here, he's fantastic, can't wait to use him, and then it completely covers up all the issues. I think I speak for a lot of people when we're quite frankly quite tired of it, and I appreciate, again, like I said, Chelsea is not the club that it was, right? We aren't the same. But if you want to be elite, you need to behave like an elite club. And right now, the guys in power and the guys making the decisions do not behave like elite individuals. And that is something which needs to change pretty swiftly if Chelsea actually want to continue to grow and go down the right path, in my opinion.
So, I mean, just, we're heading into the last game of the Premier League season, the calendar year, rather. And, Chelsea now sit 5th in the table on 29 points. Arsenal are first with 42 points. If we were just to look at the 1 through 4, Arsenal, City, Villa, Liverpool, in terms of like the starting 11 quality versus Chelsea's starting 11 quality, Ben, how many of those teams do you feel like are better situated to go out and take it the distance to win the Premier League this season in comparison to Chelsea?
Yeah, I think that this is the sort of conundrum about Chelsea, that you look at the actual 11 on paper or the 15 and you think a lot of the teams that you mentioned would take a lot of those players, but to Louis' point, they would blend them with a slightly older one. So clearly if you went through Chelsea's back line at the moment, most would have Reece James, a lot would be very interested in Levi Colwill, quite a few would want Marc Cucurella at the moment, and similarly Chelsea would probably say, great, we'll keep those 3 and we'll add Virgil van Dijk in a perfect world. But then when they don't get him, there's not we need another experienced name we're going to try for. It's perhaps we're going to back Josh Achimpong at centre-back, or we're going to look for internal solutions. And maybe there isn't a market opportunity, in fairness to them. Virgil van Dijks don't grow on trees. Van Dijk hasn't actually had a great start to the season. So had they actually signed him, it might have backfired. But I think virtually every side that you mention would take a number of those Chelsea defenders, particularly fit Reece James. Chelsea, on the other hand, would take an Alisson in goal for sure, and that would be an upgrade. You look at the midfield, and I think virtually every team in the world would take Moises Caicedo, and we know that Liverpool wanted him. Maybe the same for Enzo Fernandez. I think Chelsea would like a Rodri, but if you've got fit Lavia and fit Moises Caicedo, then do you actually need a Rodri?
I've never heard of Fit Lavia. Who's that?
No, not yet.
Who's he play for?
Haven't really heard of Fit Fofana either, and I suppose that's the sort of...
Same problem.
But that's the sort of bigger picture in all of this, that if you look at Chelsea fit, then you go, okay. If you look at Chelsea without a few key players, you go, wait a minute. And that's where the collective lack of experience maybe comes back to bite them. But again, most people would take the central midfield for Chelsea. Most people would take Cole Palmer. Most clubs would love an Esteval Willian, but like Ungamoa at Liverpool, they perhaps would say he's more one for the next 1 to 3 years and not the now. I don't think many would take Garnacho on current form. I don't think that many would necessarily bite on Jamie Gittins, but Arsenal were in the conversation for him as well.
Dodged the bullet there.
And obviously, if you look at the nines, then Chelsea would love an Alexander Isak or a Hugo Ekitike or an Erling Haaland. So that's the biggest point of difference for me, that although Chelsea haven't exactly struggled to score goals, you don't pick out even Cole Palmer, and I know he can get 15, 20 goals or have many goal contributions, but you don't pick out that one reliable name in the Chelsea team that you bet your mortgage on is going to get 20 plus goals, whereas fit Isak will, possibly Ekitike, definitely Erling Haaland. And obviously Arsenal had the same problem as Chelsea. They went for Victor Gyökeres, and I think they're pretty uncomfortable with that at the moment because they don't have it. So come the end of the season, that's going to be a key consideration, because we're talking about errors, we're talking about defence, we're talking about lack of maturity. But actually, when everyone gets fit and all these sides get going over the festive period, are Liverpool going to come good because they've got goal scorers and they'll have Isak coming back at the end of the season? Are Man City going to win the title, even though their defence has been a bit dicey in the last 18 months? Because again, they got Erling Haaland and probably Antoine Semenyo. So for me, that's what Chelsea don't have at the moment. You can't bet your mortgage on that one player, even Cole Palmer, that's going to absolutely, good game, bad game, involved, not involved, just going to get you out of trouble.
I mean, for as much as football has changed, right, there's a lot of things that are changing, the models, finances, and everything. Good striker, good goalkeeper get you a long way in any league, in any season, right? I think you could argue that Rob Sanchez is close to good, if not really good, right? I think he's been all right this year. You still don't have a striker. At the end of the ball game, like that's probably a huge difference in a year. Like, isn't that, Ben, something that you're looking at as like a key weakness in the squad to say who's going to score the goal, who's going to be a presence at least? I mean, we saw Ollie Watkins come on the field, immediately it changes. Like, it's not even like a question what happened. Like, we saw it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I'm not a Chelsea fan, so I'm prepared to dispassionately look at a young player's development and say Liam Delap could become that. That's why they invested in him. If they don't, they can cash out. If Mark Guehi gets sold, they can cash out and they can reinvest it. I think the challenge is, unless they were going to enter the race for Alexander Isak at £150 million or somehow prize a Haaland away, there's not that many target man elite nines out there. You could go for Ollie Watkins, that's fair. I think had they gone for Victor Gyökeres, he wouldn't have been a fit. So we're not in a, I think, market right now where traditional old school battering ram target men are necessarily growing on trees in the market. So if they go against the model, and maybe a lot of people here think that's a good idea, you go older and you do go and get an Ollie Watkins, and that is an upgrade in the short term. Or you gamble, like with Cucurella, and you say Liam Delap or João Pedro is going to come good. Alternatively, you have to find another 150 million and enter the conversation for a player like an Alexander Isak, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to do that.
But this is also where the lack of quality at the sport director shines through, because we were in the race for Ekitike and then we pulled out of it, or something went wrong, or whatever happened. Chelsea had the opportunity to go and sign a player of that quality. Liam Delap, I'm probably the minority with this. I do think is someone who has all the qualities to be a good number 9. Unfortunately, I think he falls in the conversation of he doesn't quite fit how Chelsea play. If you look at, and again, Ipswich and Chelsea, two very different situations. But Ipswich, he was the traditional number 9 who bullied the centre halves, and obviously we all know that he loves a fight because he gets booked every week. But you know, if he's up where he should be, bullying the centre halves rather than having to drop into midfield, so they have to make a gut busting run to get into the box, because you know we've got wingers who are a bit like puppies with the ball. They kind of like stop and like stare at it and then decide to run away. You know, I think that if we had him doing what he's good at, we might see the best out of him. But then again, that comes back to the argument about the sporting directors, where it's a market opportunity, which seems to be a phrase which we hear a lot of, and they've gone 30 million quid, we'll flip him. So again, it's not the behaviour of an elite club. And they're saying, you know, they're making a big song and dance about being world champions, about winning the Conference League, about getting top 4. But at the end of the day, what a banger, by the way. But you know,
I was waiting for them to walk out.
Oh, yeah, having a great time. But yeah, no, I mean, for me, I have no faith anymore. I lost faith years ago.
Just to clarify one thing, because I do think it's a bit of a misconception here. The criticism and the unconvinced feeling amongst some of the fan base, it again is a byproduct of the fact that most of this trial and error, most of this raising players' value, most of this developing the immature players is private. And at clubs like Liverpool and Man City, it's private for a reason, because they prioritise development over the exposure to first team football, because they don't want a Reggie Walsh or even potentially a Jorel Hato type profile playing that much first team football. So when Liverpool went to sign Lenny Yoro, they said, if you come to us, you're not going to play for the first 2 years. You're going to be with our under-23s. You're going to have a slow development. Man United came along and said, we'll expose you to first-team football. And Yoro said, I backed myself much like Cole Palmer did when he joined Chelsea. But if you're going to play it out in public, you're going to see far more failures because, like I said before, every single age group, under-23s or under-21s, the vast majority don't make it. But you don't really hear about it because they weren't included in a Conference League squad. They weren't put on the bench. They didn't have the hype. They were not billed as being the next big thing on social media. So, of course, that is a tactic, because the more marketing, the more exposure, the more times they kiss the Chelsea badge. Why bring back Nico Jackson if he doesn't want to be there, even if he would have been more of a short-term squad fix, when you can have Mark Guéhi, who come back from Sunderland, wear the Chelsea badge a few times. If he works, brilliant. If he doesn't work, you're going to get a lot more than the $5 million that you paid. And that isn't necessarily, as you put it, just chucking things at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's actually doing what a lot of clubs do, but they try and protect the younger players by doing it behind closed doors, knowing again that the vast majority of them will leave. Chelsea very intentionally and unapologetically want to basically air their dirty laundry, knowing that there may be more mistakes than successes. And it's not about bad recruitment, as we want to just see, by chucking you all in at the deep end, who is going to be the right fit. And those ones become your Cole Palmers, your Mark Cucureas. And actually in the starting 11, there's 6, 7, 8 of them that have been signed in the last 3 years that I think most would agree are excellent players. I don't think there's much dispute that fit Wesley Fofana has a place. I think everyone quite likes Enzo Fernandez still, fit Lavia, Moises Caicedo, Esteval Willian, Liam Delap, whether he's a squad player or the starting striker. There's 6 or 7 of them there. And then the ones that don't make it, it's not, as sometimes gets billed, as being about they are only signed as assets, or they're only signed to be flipped, or they're only signed to be moved on. It's just giving that collection of players the chance to show what they can do. Alfie Gilchrist, who a lot of people liked, had the same opportunity, and it was decided that he wasn't good enough for Chelsea, so he got sold. So this feels like a very new and extreme youth-led model, but every club is doing it. It's just Chelsea are doing it publicly, and other clubs feel it's better to do it behind closed doors.
You keep saying fit Lavia as if that's been a thing that we've enjoyed.
Trying to will it into...
He has never completed 90 minutes for Chelsea. I don't think he's played...
absolutely insane.
Nick, as I think about this, though, we kind of talk about this idea that like we are trying something different, and I think it, to Ben's point, we're doing things that other clubs are doing, but we're doing it in Premier League matches versus U23 matches or U21 matches, which adds a different level of complexity, which probably brings us to the situation where you would like some communication to understand that that is what we should expect as fans and supporters for what is going to happen on the pitch. And then also hope that the manager and the way that they talk about what's going on also aligns with what the strategy seems to be within how players are being put onto the pitch during those 90 minutes of football. And it maybe feels like there continues to be conflict on what we're trying to go out and accomplish in the strategy, what is being asked in 90 minutes of football, and how that actually is playing out with players and the manager.
It's part of what was talked about when they bought the club, which is like a transparency and a communication and the shadow board and all the stuff that, like, I think we, you laugh, I mean, but it is like...
I've just seen more transparency with the KGB in the early 80s. So, it is what it is.
Irony being...
The previous one was the KGB.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's odd because you would think that if you really believed in what you were doing, that you'd want to preach it from the rooftops at any point, and that hasn't been the case. In fact, we've seen less and less communication as we've gone on. Whether they listen to the show or not, I think is a whole other question. But
or they show the show to their manager.
So 5-star reviews, everyone, for that. But yeah, it's awkward because I think, like, expectations are everything, right? So if you set your expectations as we're going to be challenging for the league and we're 100% going to be challenging in the Champions League and cups are ours and we're a historically great cup team when we're in it, then that's what we are all going to expect. And if you say it's going to be 10 years before we're up there again, then I think we can all set our expectations appropriately as well. But they don't want to commit to that. They don't want to go too high or too low. They just want to drag it along. And then, again, I think there's, we were talking at dinner, like, if they raised their hand and said, hey, tough start to the year, eh? I think a bunch of people would go, yeah, it's not been great. I think we can all admit that. It's cool. But I think you'd get a lot more empathy from the fan base that way to go, all right, we look forward to seeing how you're going to fix it. And we're okay with that. We're all adults. I mean, that's part of it. But they don't do that. They come out and claim victory in the face of everything, and then when defeat happens, they aren't heard from. And I think that's a tough bit of communication policy.
Was Roman Abramovich ever heard from?
No, but he actually won things and he spent the money to make sure that no one actually asked the questions.
Arguably about the same. I mean, you might say this from a journalist perspective that I'm out of my mind, but the briefings don't count for the fans, man. Like, they don't. And I could just show you a million examples of, like, why that's the case. I mean, Semenyo being the latest one that you might go like, oh, there's hope. No, there's not. That's worse than not saying anything at all to me.
Yeah, I mean, owners generally don't speak. So one of the biggest challenges as a journalist, not that we'd ever reveal our sources, is how can you develop relationships with anyone, the top of a football club, the top of an agency, the top of a players' network. And the hardest one to crack is always ownership, because they're often in different time zones. They don't want that day-to-day necessarily with journalists. So you work hard to kind of get their ear. And then, as with any source, you put scrutiny on that source, because even if they tell you something, it may not prove to be true. So for me, it's not necessarily at Chelsea or any club about an ownership coming out and saying, here's what we're doing right, here's what we're doing wrong. You could, but I remember Yasser Al-Rumayyan did an interview with Newcastle doing exactly that. And the whole fan base battered it, because they're like, it's through the club, it's just PR. Yeah, we see it coming out of their mouth, but we still don't necessarily believe it. Vinay, the new Spurs CEO, did a, I think, quite elaborative and insightful interview, setting the tone. But all it did is get Tottenham fans to go, well, what the hell's going on now? We're not winning games. It's not working with Frank at the moment. We're not active in the market. Where's the follow-up? Where's the acknowledgement of what he said hasn't happened? So I think owners generally are the most faceless people in football in all of these categories, but what they have to be, if they're going to be faceless, is consistent. So Chelsea's belief is that they're consistently on course with this project. They, even if you can't create a linear line of success, will look at Maresca's first season and say, we've got a gold badge, we've got Champions League football, we've got a Europa Conference League trophy, and we finished in the top 4. The way they did it wasn't always convincing, but if you're marking that report card, but like I said before, the end of the season they've got to better that or equal that, because if they don't, then rightly people will say the project's going backwards.
So it is going backwards. It's going so far backwards.
So Ben, on that one, if we just kind of drill down one layer deeper, between the manager and the owners are sporting directors who own kind of the direction of the football strategy. And so, they're the ones I think would be judged on, like, the player recruitment, who we bring in, the amount of hits versus misses, the expectation at the end of the season. What does like it look like potentially, in terms of how they get evaluated relative to the manager, to the players on the pitch, and from the owners down?
Yeah, I mean, the evaluation is difficult, and one of the trickiest things about this Chelsea project is that, working or not working, everyone's on a slightly different period of evaluation. And that was a big issue with Mauricio Pochettino, because he was turning around and going, who cares if Esteval joins when he's 18? I'm on a 2-year contract with a review at the end of year 1. So the point of Maresca was to try and align him on a longer term contract. But we now know that he has his own friction. We know that he may be interested if a Manchester City vacancy comes up. And obviously he's got a review at the end of year 2. So year 2 versus 2029 with a 1-year option, it still means basically after 2 years he's being judged. Pochettino was only going to get 2 years and didn't get a return 50% of the way through. So we're seeing a pattern of Chelsea managers kind of being judged roughly 50% of the way through, which is not atypical in football. Sporting directors are given upwards of 10 windows, so between 3 and 5 years. Owners
Jesus Christ. Oh, my God.
Easy.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Sorry, carry on, sorry.
I didn't realize we didn't have medical staff.
Oh, my God. Where is a defibrillator? I need it right now.
But, sporting directors is a very fluid term at Chelsea, and that's the other issue, that there's 5 of them by title now, led by Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. Dave Fallows has come in, very highly respected from Liverpool, and they've all got accountability over slightly different parts of the business. Obviously, everything filters up to the main 2 sporting directors and then above them to the ownership team. And they're not supposed to agree, because if they all just agree, then it's just on the whim of an owner or a sporting director, and you don't have a functional model. So when Liverpool were at their heyday under Jurgen Klopp, or even last season under Arne Slot, they were arguing. Ruben Amorim said when he speaks to Jim Ratcliffe, he tells him to F off. So you want a bit of that tension and friction, because if there isn't the freedom to challenge and the healthy debate, you don't come to the right decisions. So when we're judging people outside of managers or players, the main thing we've not seen yet is anyone actually making a final decision by majority outside of the owners themselves, whether Behdad Eghbali or Todd Boehly. And that's kind of critical, because if everyone's an extension of the ownership, and the ownership back their model, then everyone they employ will basically just be fulfilling a strategy, and you won't have enough friction, professionally speaking, which is actually really healthy. So what they've tried to do in the last few years is kind of align the model so everyone broadly is on a longer term plan, everyone is given a little bit more patience, and that will mean that when you get to probably this summer or next summer, the sporting directors will be reviewed again, the owners will be reviewed. The Clear Lake investors, people don't really realise this, Behdad Eghbali and Jose Feliciano only actually have about 1.5% each of their own money in the football club. And the Clear Lake pot is 67%. So 2/3 of Chelsea is at the whim of relatively faceless investors that are not day on day actually that bothered by what Chelsea do. They've been promised a return on investment, and they have trusted Eghbali and Feliciano to give them that. And obviously after a certain point in time, I think the first will be 2027 when Todd Boehly's chairmanship ends. There'll kind of be a big picture Blueco type review, and the second will be after 10 years. And at each juncture, the investors on the Clear Lake side will want to know that this 2.5 billion is becoming 3.5 billion, because periodically, to my knowledge, they can individually cash out and just be replaced and the fund gets topped up again. So the ownership will be judged based on their investors. Boehly and Eghbali will be judged on their relationship with each other and can they get strategically on the same page. And even though it was never a civil war, they're not there yet. The sporting directors will be judged, I believe, every sort of 3 to 5 years. So they've sort of passed their first one and they're heading towards phase 2. And the manager we know will be judged this summer.
That just sounds like an absolute mess. I get there's having friction. I really do appreciate that, right? You do need to have friction and disagreements to try and find something. But we've all just had Christmas, right? Was there 7 of you cooking the turkey? Like, it's just like, there's just so much about it where there is just too many cooks in the kitchen, and many of those cooks have no idea what they're doing. That for me, it's just I don't see the value in having 5 sporting directors. 2 at a push is like that's.
Well, I mean, it's
that's
a five-a-side team. You know, that works out real well.
Honestly, if it's a 5-a-side team, we batter them every week, mate. It's not. It's like honestly, this lot is. It's. Look, if this is the review and the point they're at, it says a lot about the quality of what people are after. And I go back. I always worry. I remember obviously Benedict Barley talking. I think it was about 18 months ago, and obviously waxing lyrical about Brighton. Yeah, they've got a great model. But we're saying, oh, it's great, they win as much as they lose, but buying a club like Chelsea, yeah, the cultural divide, and obviously I understand the portfolio stuff, I get all of that. If someone's going to invest a lot of money from a hedge fund, you've got to know that they're going to want a return. They're not in it for the love, right? And that is the vast majority of top-level football now, and it kills me every single time. But there are people sat in a room right now listening to a fat idiot at a table, not you, Nick, me, talk about Chelsea.
Damn.
And I said, look, listen, mate, you're looking.
That was a
good,
low
mate.
blow.
No, I said I'm the fat one. It's all good. Because he was looking at me like a bit worried.
Christmas for that.
But I know. I think Christmas it is my fault. I cooked a great turkey. But it's just me as well. But I like. It's very much a case of there are people here that are emotionally invested in things, and there is just for me not an appreciation for these people. And I understand football's going a very different way. And I understand that despite our emotional investment, it's not a financial investment. Understanding the culture of what you walk into and what you're trying to build, and then consistently saying things, moving the goalposts, like Nick said, talking about the briefings, it's just quite soulless and it's depressing. And yes, winning the Club World Cup's great, but that was the previous ownership that got us there. It wasn't them. And could I see Chelsea winning the Club World Cup, Champions League, Premier League anytime soon with the model that they've got? Absolutely not.
So we got time for 2 questions. Going to Lance first because I saw first hand there.
Question for Ben. Has anyone in the Chelsea hierarchy articulated that the model will mature at some point? Because,
Great question.
Especially with the wage structure, in 2 or 3 years, I see Caicedo, Palmer, Fernandez, if he isn't gone already. All the best players are going to leave because they're not going to want to pay them outside their current wage structure.
So the question for people listening was that will the model mature, does the model mature at a certain date or time relative to what the sporting directors or the hierarchies indicated? Because is there a view that in a few years, some of the best players right now who are going to continue to mature, like a Caicedo, like a Palmer, might actually be on the exit route in terms of then becoming a really valued asset that the club would want to cash in on to reinvest for the next generation of Chelsea players?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And to my knowledge, it is maturing and they have certain junctures for maturity. So the first one was about getting through 5 windows, and naturally it's never linear. So they probably were pushed back a little bit and then ended their phase 1, in their opinion anyway, after that sort of big summer that they had that included Moises Caicedo's arrival. And then I think the aim is 2027 as the next sort of juncture. And 2027, to my knowledge, heading into the 2027-28 season, is about seeing a core group of players stabilise. So like I said before, the first sign, if that is the case and Chelsea is successful, is the average age of the squad at that point starts to go up to what you would consider to be peak age, anywhere maybe between 23 and 25. And if that's happening, it suggests that your Caicedos, your Palmers are all at the club, and that you have a very familiar Chelsea 11 or squad that's not that dissimilar from where we are now. I'm sure they think Liam Delap and Esteval Willian are both part of that, and maybe 1 or 2 other academy products like Josh Anchimpong that are on their way up and starting to get some game time. So that's the sort of on-the-field first juncture. And it's quite a key one because summer 2027 is the same time when Todd Boehly's tenureship as chair ends. And the terms of the takeover deal are that Boehly first, then Clearlake, then Boehly again get to pick the chair. So Clearlake will basically get to decide who the chair is. And obviously at that point, Boehly will have to decide, are they strategically aligned? And summer 2027, by the latest, the expectation is that they will have a stadium plan and various other brand things, at least on paper. So that's kind of the next big juncture that they're looking towards. And that of course, gives them until the beginning of 2027-28 season to show they can add to this silverware. Because if they go forwards on the brand, forwards on the blue co, forwards on the bottom line, but backwards on the field, it won't mean anything to anybody. But if they double up and add 2 more bits of silverware between now and 2027, and the core group suddenly appears mature, without you even realising it, in the same way that people don't really focus on Caicedo or Enzo Fernandez's price tag, people aren't battering Rob Sanchez as much. Unbeknown to many, whether outside of Chelsea or in the fan base, there'll come a point where you forget that these are young players, because you're like, oh, Reece James suddenly seems like he's addressed some leadership qualities and it's a bit more second nature to him. And it's very subtle, of course, so you won't know the exact juncture. But that's the sort of Chelsea belief, that 2027 on the field, there'll be more leaders, there'll be older players, they can be more picky and strategic with their recruitment. And that's the first kind of element. And then the bigger picture maturity is a bit less clear, because my understanding was always that when they started, it was about 3 years to build something multi-club that would go beyond just Strasbourg and Chelsea. And we know they looked at Rio Avenue. They're still very interested in investment in South America. So all these things have slowed down. And I think the reason why is because there has been some acceptance amongst the ownership that we've got our hands full with Chelsea and Strasbourg. We don't need to go buying and controlling another club in South America and then having 3, because before you know it, you got a lot of cooks, but actually all spread quite thin. So I'm going to be really intrigued to see whether, as they stabilise Strasbourg into regular European football, and as they have 2 styles running concurrent, and as they have 2 managers with the same philosophy, and as we've already seen, as they have a lot of crossover between the 2 clubs, is that connection going to be fruitful and functional? And then from there, maybe at some point between now and 2030, they'll look for more strategic investment. But this is the part of the project in terms of its maturity that puzzles me the most, because you have Todd Boehly, who's very much multi-sport. And Boehly's belief is, we've got Chelsea, let's focus on Chelsea. Let's delegate and let's let the experts run it. And then Boehly will be brand and bigger picture. And therefore he wants to go to Earl's Court in a dream world. He wants a multi-sports venue. He wants to bring baseball. He wants to bring basketball. And he wants Chelsea to be the only real football property, though, of course, officially, we have to say he had a veto and he's involved in Strasbourg. So now let's just call it Chelsea Strasbourg. But I think when he first started, it was just Chelsea, Chelsea, Chelsea for Boehly. If you look at Blueco and Clearlake, they're thinking more football only. So that has its pros, because they only want to focus on football. They, again, only want Chelsea and Strasbourg to feed off each other. They're not interested in the Dodgers coming to Stamford Bridge or anywhere else. But there's a mismatch there. And strategically, the stadium plans started with Janet Marie Smith, an architect that did Dodger Renovation Stadium, and that was all Boehly. The board member Jonathan Goldstein, who's kind of Boehly's right-hand man at Kane International, property developer. So the maturity of the project on day one, because Abramovich made you stipulate what you were going to do with everything as part of the terms of getting the deal done, was all sort of on track one way. And, okay, I'm simplifying it a bit, but it was the Boehly way. And then slowly Clearlake, who were always going to be hands-on, have decided they want to do it a different way. And I think what set it back was that mismatch. And now Jason Gannon's come in as president, and he's very much a unifying figure, highly respected. Everyone seems to like him. So I think what's happened is a lot of the strategic parts of the Chelsea project outside of recruitment have actually been set back because they've not been able to come up with a clear and unified plan. Now Gannon's in, I think it's going to start. But I think we're basically only in the first year of that unification, and there's still some debate about stadium and other parts of the business. So that's another thing when we answer maturity and we talk about where this project is going. The brand and the big picture stuff and the Blueco stuff and the ownership bits, they're all one element. And I think they're way less mature. And then there's the recruitment side, which now they've built a team they would argue is more mature, and yet the irony is the players themselves are not mature, so they've got to find a way of the project developing while sticking to this youth-led strategy. And that's why I think that they'll be prepared to be patient and wait until summer 2027 before judging whether this project is indeed maturing.
But then, based on what you just said there, sorry, I just want to. I'll be quiet after this. When you were talking about 2027, but then saying that things in different places in other parts of the business, surely that's a problem in itself. So if there's no timelines of we're going to be dealing with the branding and this, and it's kind of all got to come to a head at some point, but there's wavering timelines on two very large parts of the business where one has just been completely decimated within the first few years because they've had to change it completely. Surely that's just going to be more of a problem down the line as well. That's what I'm trying to say in terms of the overall strategy. It just seems mental.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have different parts of the strategy. You have the football vision that you would never want to publicly outline that much. You know, PIF are not there saying, we've got loads of money, here's what we're going to do on the football side. They're keeping it really secretive because that's what you do. You don't want to give away too many recruitment clues.
Absolutely.
Stadium, I think, is the big one, but in fairness, it's not like Man United where there's just a plot of land behind the Stratford end. It's not like Spurs where next to White Hart Lane there's just a plot. So I can understand why they've gone, wait a minute, let's not just rush into Janet Marie Smith because she's a renovation expert. So that would have lent towards stand by stand. And obviously, if you think financially, Clearlake know how to do one thing, which is keep investors happy and make money. So I don't think anybody's got any doubts that despite all these stories about PSR or financial fair play or Abramovich historical things, I think most people accept they know what they're doing with money. So that's the least of their worries. They're not going to run Chelsea into debt. They're not going to spend and then leave because they've made a binding 10-year commitment. Obviously, we need to understand if Eghbali and Bowley are both going to be long-term partners or whether eventually they're going to go their separate ways. But the main thing in all of this is just when we speak about maturity, the owners themselves were not mature football people. So the biggest learning for them is they've come into an industry and a football club of which compared to every other area where they're strong, they had less football knowledge. And then Bowley was instantly sporting director, and now Badad Eghbali is heavily involved in recruitment. So there's a period of their own learnings, and like any other player, they may have made mistakes, but what I would say is how many other owners have been a sporting director? How many other owners are this invested in recruitment? Many listening that are fans might say it's a bad thing, and that is your opinion. I'm not here to take one or the other.
Very Dallas Cowboys of us,
Yeah.
with a Jerry Jones type model.
But I don't think it's a bad thing to have had that experience. But you know, you've got to learn from that experience. And I suppose they would acknowledge they made mistakes, but they would acknowledge that they're far more knowledgeable about football now than when they first joined, which can only be a positive.
Last.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on what you said, so isn't that two things for me, comment and then a question. First thing you do about strategy is you do strategy, you don't talk strategy. So I think this ownership has talked the strategy about how they're going to buy, they're going to look, and that works if nobody knows what you're trying to do. Brighton can do that, Chelsea can't. And then the second thing is you treat your family better than you treat strangers. And so what do you then tell your family in the academy when you're going out and buying a Jamie Gittins for an exorbitant amount of money? What does that tell Tyreek George, Shinuka, Sam Raksaki? In terms of, so how does that model then reconcile with what was your superpower, was an academy that churned out quality football players at a ridiculous volume, and you could have sold those people, but now you've gone and told the market we're going to buy every fetus out there that we can find and treat it better than the ones we've grown at home for 10 years.
So the question was about reconciliation of the model with young player recruitment and talent versus having Cobham and the academy and tons of talented players there, which has really been a boon for Chelsea over the years, being able to progress players from the youth academy into the first team. But then also, they don't make it in the first team to be players that could go out and compete, whether it's at the Premier League or in the Bundesliga or in Ligue 1, who have been able to have successful careers in their post-Chelsea, post-Cobham era. That, how do you find the balance between the respect for those players and their career and using them appropriately versus this recruitment of every young, talented player in world football?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the maturity point, though, that right now there's a bit of a lost generation in the academy because they've recruited aggressively in the same age group as a series of prospects that they have. Although, would previous managers and under Roman Abramovich have put your Reggie Walshes into the first team as early as they did? So there have been some opportunities from the academy that would be considered common projects or profiles that predate this ownership. But I think it's just they've attacked an age group out of opportunism, so the strategy appears a bit warped, whereas now they've stocked that age group. I'm not led to believe that they're still always looking for 18 to 21 consistently and bringing someone in at the expense of someone that's developed. What they'll be doing with Dave Fallows, which is why he's been appointed, you know, he's basically been a chief scout his whole life and has relationships with young players, and his target group will perhaps be more your 12 to 14 or even potentially 8 to 12. So quietly, without people realizing, they'll go lower in the age bracket to try and bring people into the academy that are 5 years off any first team football. And then when they burst through, the perception will just be, wow, we've got a great conveyor belt. And I think the second thing is that modern football just now goes against, even though it's not great if you're a sentimentalist like I am. You know, I'm a Leicester fan. We had Emile Heskey come through. I'd love 1,000 Emile Heskeys through Leicester. Brilliant.
Never thought I'd do that, Emile.
There's probably a shirt here somewhere, but from Liverpool, not Leicester. But I think modern football is not about having an academy that's only local anymore. You have to adapt to the times. And as football becomes global, if you're only thinking about who's London born and bred, who's a Chelsea fan from birth, who's the next sort of iconic, you know, Chelsea through and through player, sometimes you have to manufacture that by recruiting global, finding them at a young age and ingraining them where Chelsea's their first club, but it might not be anywhere close to what they're used to, their culture, it might not be their place of birth. And I think that is just the globalization of football. And as much as we'd all like to invest in academies, if you only focus on that and only look for local, you're basically turning your nose up at a global market. And I think as a Big Six club, you can't do that anymore in modern football. So it doesn't surprise me, even though Man United have got a proud record of academy players in every squad since pretty much the beginning of time, it doesn't surprise me that we're not seeing as many class of 99 type academies all bursting through. I think that's just the globalization of football.
So that's going to do it for this part of our show and our time here at Classic Football Shirts tonight. So, I mean, again, a wonderful opportunity during this festive season to take a look back at what Chelsea have done this season and this year so far, and an opportunity to talk to our friends Paul Canoville and Kalish from the Paul Canoville Foundation, and also an opportunity to bring Louis Beneventi and Ben Jacobs on to talk a little bit about the current state of Chelsea. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.
Well done, boys. Good shot.